One of the most misunderstood things about avoidance is the notion that they somehow fear commitment. They don't fear commitment at all. They might even think that they fear commitment. They might even openly say they're afraid to put labels on things. But the fear isn't actually about commitment itself. They're afraid of rejection and abandonment. It's just masked as a fear of commitment. Let me explain. First, take a look at the history of your avoidant partner or avoidant ex, the one that was afraid to commit to you. Chances are, somewhere along the way, they had a longer term committed relationship with somebody. But chances are that person that they committed to, maybe even married, was very toxic, narcissistic, maybe did things like cheat on them. Maybe they were a drug addict or an alcoholic, but a very toxic ex nonetheless. But they were afraid to commit to you, but they committed to that person. So why is this? There are reasons. So to really understand why it's not actually a fear of commitment itself, we have to go back to the avoidant's childhood. This is a person that was on the receiving end of consistent, profound emotional neglect. They grew up in a household where you don't talk about feelings. Often it's a household where parents don't even say, I love you, or if they do, it's conditional, based off of achievement, off of accomplishment, getting good grades, hitting the winning home run, things like that. But not getting that love and nurturing. And on top of it all, they had their feelings rejected, their feelings dismissed outright, sometimes even punished or reprimanded for having feelings. So what happens is they learn that getting close to anybody isn't safe. They also develop a core wound of shame. Shame is a toxic emotion. Shame is that feeling like I'm defective, I'm not lovable, I'm worthless, I'm not worth loving. And that's because they personalize that neglect. Now, this shame and experience that being close to anybody isn't safe, it creates a profound fear of emotional intimacy and vulnerability because their fear that largely lies in the subconscious, although some avoidants are aware of it. The fear is if I lower my walls and I let my partner in, my partner is going to figure me out. They're going to figure out that I'm not so great. They're going to figure out that I'm defective. They're going to figure out that I'm not lovable, and they're going to reject me. So emotional closeness feels extremely unsafe to them because it means they're going to get exposed as being defective and get rejected. That's why emotional distance feels safe. So how does this tie into commitment? Well, when you commit to somebody at a deeper level, it is implied that you have to be vulnerable with the person you're committed to. You can't have any walls up with a partner that you're deeply committed to, especially engaged with or married. So therefore, commitment means you got to be vulnerable, and vulnerability means rejection. So guess what? Therefore, commitment also equals rejection and abandonment. So their emotional brain, their subconscious, it feels that if they commit to somebody, this person will discover that they're not so great and they will reject them and abandon them. But if they don't commit, they have an excuse to keep an emotional buffer, a wall up, which means they can prevent themselves from getting exposed as defective, and they can prevent themselves from getting rejected and abandoned. So commitment really triggers that core fear of rejection, abandonment, that's all rooted in shame. So how is it that they can commit to the toxic person? Well, a toxic person that's narcissistic, for example, that's an emotionally unavailable person. Because one of the core components of emotional availability is the ability and the willingness to empathize with your partner, to share their emotions, to care about their feelings. If you're going to be toxic, narcissistic, and abusive, well, you can't do those behaviors and have empathy for your partner. So there's no emotional availability there, meaning the toxic partner has walls up, which means that there's no pressure for the avoidant to lower their walls. This person has walls up. They can keep their own walls up. They can commit to that person safely because they don't have to be vulnerable with that person. So commitment to the toxic partner doesn't involve any vulnerability. Therefore, that commitment is safe. But committing to you, the emotionally available partner, That's unsafe because there's an unspoken pressure to lower their walls for you because you don't have any walls with them. So emotional intimacy is a threat with you, but it wasn't a threat with that toxic person. That's why they're able to go all in with a more toxic, narcissistic, emotionally unavailable partner, but they struggle to commit and stay with a partner that's loving and emotionally available because they fear that rejection, which they feel is inevitable from the healthier partner. It's just inevitable that the loving partner is going to figure out that the avoidant is worthless and defective and going to reject them. It's not that they actually are worthless, but they feel that deep down at their core. It is a shame-driven attachment style. Avoidant attachment, especially dismissive, it is all shame-based behavior. It's all about avoiding confronting and feeling their inner shame and avoiding exposing their shame to the world. So everything they do is all about avoiding the shame. So by keeping you at an emotional distance, they are avoiding their shame. But they don't have to keep the other person at an emotional distance because there's never any threat of emotional closeness. So the toxic person, they can commit to that person because that person doesn't trigger their attachment wounds. It's all about the attachment wounds. So you show up loving, consistent, emotionally available. That's why they couldn't commit to you. It's not because you did anything wrong. It's not because you weren't worth it. It's because deep down at their core, they felt not good enough for you. But they felt good enough for the toxic, more narcissistic